The last time we had SUVs on the big test, we had four-wheel drive versions of the Nissan Terra and the Isuzu MU-X. And it was this, the Isuzu MU-X, that emerged victorious. So we brought it back here again, but this time in 4x2 LSE form to face off newer and slightly more seasoned competition.
The all-new Everest has been a bestseller for Ford ever since it launched a few months ago. But can it compete with the MU-X?
And we're here with the Mitsubishi Montero Sport Ralliart Edition. We want to find out if it can still keep up with the newer boys in the segment.
This is Anton.
This is Jason.
And this is Dre.
And
this is the big test. Hey, bud.
Are you still okay there, Dre?
What we're going to be looking at now is a 60 to 100 test. We're going to find out how long it takes each SUV to go from cruising speed to the maximum highway speed. Plus, it gives us a chance to test these vehicles out on the highway and to stretch their legs a little bit.
I'm waving the flag for Isuzu here with the 3-liter MU-X. I also have the biggest and most powerful engine in the bunch. Plus, it has 190 horsepower and 450 Newton meters of torque. I'm feeling confident when it comes to passing with this thing.
I'm here now in the Ford Everest. In particular, this is the 4x2 Titanium Plus variant. Now this runs on a 2-liter turbo diesel engine that does 168 horsepower and 405 Newton meters of torque. Now what I like about this is that the power delivery is very immediate. You put your foot down and the thing responds right away. You're able to reach highway speeds very, very quickly. So for example, I just put my foot down and that forced induction just kicks in and you're able to reach the desired speed quite quickly.
I'm behind the wheel of the Montero Sport, and this thing is packing a 2.4-liter MyVec turbo diesel engine. Power-wise, this thing puts up 178 horsepower and 413 Newton meters of torque. Okay, so we're gonna lower it now, and 80, 90, 100. Okay. Now, of course, we're going to have to check the timer to see how it fares against the MU-X and the Everest, but that felt like good time to me, right?
Up next, we have fuel efficiency, because fuel prices are insanely expensive these days. And because diesel is gold, you want to know which one makes the most out of every drop. So we took these SUVs out for about 120 kilometers, mix of highway, provincial roads, a bit of a idle here and there. In this MU-X, despite having a large engine, it still managed 14.2 kilometers per liter. There were a lot of things that went against its favor, but I think 14.2 kilometers per liter is a strong result. Now let's take a look at the other ones.
Let's see the fuel economy. So I'm gonna press this and it reads 11.7 liters per 100 kilometers converted. That's around 9, more or less, 9 kilometers per liter. So yeah, that's with mixed highway and provincial road driving.
Okay, so I heard Anton's Isuzu MU-X was able to achieve 14.2 kilometers per liter, while Dre's Montero Sport got 9 kilometers per liter. Okay, so let's find out how the Ford Everest did. 13.9 kilometers per liter. Not bad at all, I'd say.
Okay guys, so we've tested speed, we've tested fuel economy, but what's the point if you feel like you're a ragdoll being thrown around inside an expensive tin box? Now we're gonna test how comfortable these three SUVs are with me sitting in the back seat.
And we're gonna kick things off with the Ford Everest to see how comfortable it is. And just for the heck of it, we've put the tallest person all the way in the third row to see what the ride's like, all the way back there. So here at the front, it is, well, pretty comfortable. And I mentioned before in the Everest Sport review that it is one of the closest that gets to a crossover. It's still truck-like in some sense. You're gonna feel some movement underneath the chassis, etc. But it's not too bad. It's supple for a truck. And that's despite the fact that the frame of this generation of Everest isn't totally new, so kudos to Ford for that. Plus, let's not forget the fact that this thing is riding on huge 20-inch alloys. What about you, Jason? What about the ride in the second row?
Alright, well, just to provide some context, I'm 5'5", same height as Anton, just for the record as well. Headroom is a little short. I'm estimating there's about, maybe just about 4 inches of space above my head. It's not a lot. Taller passengers might have a bit of difficulty with that. However, legroom feels quite ample. Again, I'm in the same height as Anton, so his seat is pushed fairly up in front, but I do have ample legroom back here. It's quite comfortable. Width-wise, I feel like you could fit 3 of me here quite easily. So, like Anton mentioned, for kicks, we decided to put the tallest person in the back seat. How's it back there?
Ride-wise, I'm expecting that, like Anton said, this is going to be the best among the 3. I have a couple of issues here. Namely, the biggest one is that the rear axle is kind of eating up a considerable amount of the room where my feet should be. So you're gonna have a hard time planting your feet on the floor. That, and I'm around 5'9", 5'10" in between. I'm taller than both Jason and Anton, just for the record, since they said that the same thing too. Yeah, it's a tight fit. Headroom, it's okay. One thing I like about this part of the car is that the rear AC vents are placed in a good position here. It's not to the side, so you can actually feel the cold all over your body, not just on the side of your face like with some vehicles. So that's something I think is worth mentioning.
All right, folks, we are now in the Isuzu MU-X, and immediately the steering is heavier compared to the Everest, and with this bump, it is a lot firmer. Now, if you're coming from the previous gen MU-X, that was a bit of a floaty bed of a thing. This one, not so much. In fact, it's the exact opposite. As you can see, my head's moving around a little bit more compared to the Everest, and there's more body motion. It's a lot firmer than what you would expect. Now, granted, it's not like a pickup truck. It's not too firm, but let's ask those in the second row how they feel.
Alright, so I'm here in the second row of the Isuzu MU-X. Headroom compared to the Everest is a little bit better. Legroom a little less. What I'm finding though are 2 things. One, width-wise, this is a little less spacious than the Everest. Whereas in the Everest, I said that you could fit 3 of me quite comfortably. Here, I'm not so sure. Here, it's closer to 2.5. You could probably fit 3 of me, but it'd be a bit of a tight fit. Now, the other complaint, Anton touched on this, is that you'll notice right now, road's not even that rough, but I'm rocking to and fro. That's because this is much firmer than the Everest. Compared to the Everest, this is a bit of a tailbone killer. Dre?
Are you still okay there, Dre?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm being thrown around like a rag doll here, but the quality in the third row does leave a lot to be desired. On the plus side, there is much more room here for my legs. If I had to estimate, I'd say around 2 to 3 inches more legroom back here compared to the Everest, which is good. And the rear axle is jutting out less compared to the Ford, which is also a big plus because it's much more comfortable for my feet. One thing I did notice, however, is that it takes a little while longer for the rearmost part of the vehicle to cool. I don't know if that's the insulation or the AC system, or maybe the weather just changed while we were switching cars, but I think that's something worth noting.
One thing worth highlighting here is that these middle row bench seats don't slide. These are your typical flip up ones, so they don't actually stick to the ground. They don't have any mechanism to make them slide back and forth, so that plays into the legroom quite a lot.
Adding to that, I think that's probably the reason why there's better legroom back here. It doesn't slide back, so yeah.
And less legroom here because it doesn't slide back.
So there you have it, the MU-X, and now for the senior citizen of the group, the Montero Sport. In terms of comfort, and in this case ride, you know, here's a shocker. It's better than the MU-X, considering this SUV's age. Now sure, it's not like the Everest, but if you're gonna compare this between the MU-X, this is more comfortable. Not just marginally so, like by a sort of significant margin as well. That's pretty surprising considering the Montero Sport is the smallest, has the shortest wheelbase, has the narrowest body. It's still pretty okay, and it can still keep up with the newer boys. I wouldn't mind driving this for a long distance at all. And even the steering, I was expecting it to be heavier compared to the MU-X, but no, it's lighter, and there is actually more steering feel compared to the Isuzu. The Isuzu was just really heavy at some points with this one. This one gets the balance right. Now we're on a slightly ruttier path of the road, and again, I'm not getting jarred too much. So that's the first row. How about you, Jason? How's the second row?
Okay, second row. A modicum of headroom for my 5'5" frame, roughly about the same as the Everest. Leg room, actually quite a lot in my case. Maybe it's because it's Andonteng in front of me, but there is actually quite a bit of leg room. Again, same like the Everest. Where this loses out there is in width. Right now, as I'm sitting neutrally, my right leg is already encroaching into the middle space. So does that mean three of me will fit here comfortably? Probably not. Now, as Anton touched on earlier, ride comfort here is way, way, way better than the MU-X. Does it come close to the Everest? Not quite, but still between the three, you know, it's first and then it's second and then third is just a far away. Far away place. So it wins out in that department over the MU-X. Dre, how's the third row?
Ride-wise, basically, long story short, it's the same as what you guys said. It's better than the MU-X, but the Everest is still by far the most comfortable SUV we've ridden in today. I mean, at least for me in the third row. There's more legroom here, I would say, compared to the Everest, but space to move your feet around is pretty much non-existent because you can't tuck it underneath the second row seats. There's no space there at all.
So there you have it, folks. The Everest wins the comfort test by quite a significant margin. And then it's second place for the veteran Montero Sport, and a choppy third place for the Isuzu.
So, why do you buy an SUV? It's because you want, or really you need, the space. So, let's find out just how spacious each one of these SUVs are, and let's find out all the toys that they have in store.
First, we want to demonstrate how you fold down the third row. Okay, so in the case of the Montero Sport, it actually takes quite a bit of work. Let me show you. You pull this, and that brings the seat base up. Then you want to fold the backrest down by pulling this and pushing it. There, and you do the same thing here. It looks simple enough, but again, it's not exactly convenient when you compare it to the drop downs of the Ford Everest and the Isuzu MU-X. So for the boxes, guys, can I have some help? Now let's see how much space is left inside after we stick these two things in.
Opening's a bit narrow now.
Okay, so do you think it's gonna fit the second
Let's
one?
find out.
No. Wheel.
Wait. Stop. This is a three-man job.
Okay.
Okay,
So let's push him against the wheel wells.
that's a tight fit.
Just barely. So we'll close.
Watch out.
And it passes. So I guess we're gonna have to pull these boxes out again and stick them in the other SUVs, right?
Yep, and you're already out of breath. Talaga eh, no? Like, this is in the way. Whoop, seatbelt. Teka. Wait, it caught against the flap thing.
And then when you open and then you can't fold these down when these are up.
Nope, we can't.
Wait. Is this stuck, hopelessly stuck then?
Yeah.
Hold up. There we go. Wait, and then
Angle it. Pivot.
Alright, there we go.
Okay, you got it.
What is this? Oh, it lost a wheel.
next we're gonna try out the same thing in the Ford Everest. So let's fold these down. 1 and 2. That was easy. Okay, take this. Yeah. And
let's see. Hold up. Show off. Yeah. Oh, what do you think, Jason?
that was really easy. That was seamless. There's much more space in between. It's gonna be very easy to get these out. And let's close it, see how it is. Well, look at that. No problems.
That took a lot shorter than Jerry's Montero Sport.
All right, let's get these out. All right. Actually, we can get both of these out at the same time. How about that?
Now for the Isuzu MU-X, and to stow the third row seats, you just have to pull this and let gravity do the rest. And to set it, it's as simple as that. So, the box test. So, stow these, lift these, put it to each corner, and would you look at that? And there's even a large amount of space in the middle left. So all in all, yes, all three of them pass, but there are a few observations. So for example, in the Montero Sport, the opening was pretty narrow and the entire body of the SUV was narrow. That's why it only had about that much space left in it. The Everest actually had the best opening because the openings were square. So if you're gonna load in taller items, you're not gonna have much problems. And the MU-X is somewhere in the middle. Though I did notice the space in between these two boxes are almost the same between the wider Everest and the slightly narrower MU-X. Now, I know we've talked about the MU-X in the past, but there's no harm in touching on it again. Now, as far as the design is concerned, it's a lot swankier than Isuzu's of the past. You got curves and lines everywhere, and you even get nice little trim pieces to go along with it. You have an 8-inch infotainment screen, and it's probably not as comprehensive as some of its competition, but yeah, it mainly controls basic functions, and it also has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Now let's talk safety, and the MU-X comes standard with 7 airbags. Heck, you even get an airbag for your knee for a good measure. And it's even rated 5 stars in the ASEAN NCAP crash test. So if ever the worst would happen, most likely you're gonna walk away from it. And it also has systems to prevent an accident from happening in the first place because it has a brake override system. So in case you find yourself stepping on both the gas and the brake pedal, you're going to be fine. It's just going to put the car in neutral and you're not going to move any further than that. It also has adaptive cruise control, rear cross traffic alert, a huge rear view camera, and automatic emergency braking. And here's a feature that you won't find in the newer Ford Everest: a seatbelt height adjuster. So let's move on over to the Ford to see if it can make up for the lack of that.
Yes, unfortunately for the Ford Everest, it does not have seatbelt height adjustment. However, it has a couple of things that I much prefer over these two other models. One, it has a panoramic sunroof. Second thing that's unique to this model is this very interesting, again I use the word again, very unique 12-inch touchscreen infotainment display. And you might have seen this in our previous review of Ford's new models. It's a really cool thing. You can draw on it, you can toggle through all the controls in it. It's a nice touch. Another thing I like, and it might seem very simple, but it signals to me that Ford had the user experience in mind when it put this car together, is this. No nonsense, very simple, easy to use. Knobs and buttons for the aircon controls. Very easy to toggle, don't even have to think about it, especially when you're driving. One thing I don't like, and it's very limiting in this car, is the cruise control. Yes, it has cruise control, but unlike these other two, it's not adaptive cruise control. At this price range, it's something you kind of expect.
Now, I mentioned that this car is a little bit aged compared to the other two we have here today, but it does have a few tricks up its sleeve that some of these vehicles do not have. For one thing, this is the only vehicle in this lineup that comes with a 360-degree camera, which is a big help if you're someone who's very particular about the way you park or have to constantly maneuver through tight spaces. Another big plus is the inclusion of adaptive cruise control, something that you'd used to only find in higher end, perhaps top spec or 4x4 units.
Yeah, so before we pick a winner, let's talk price. So this MU-X is 2,110,000. Jason?
This Ford Everest is 2,179,000. Okay.
And the Montero Sport Ralliart Edition is 2,122,000 pesos.
So this is the least expensive, the most expensive. But when you think about it, how much is the price difference? It's about 80,000, yeah?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah. And if you're shopping in this segment,
It's kind of negligible, especially if you're paying over 3 to 5 years, I think.
so you know, they're all practically closely priced anyway. So there's that. Pros and cons, do you have anything about your car?
Okay, so the pros of this thing, it's the most comfortable of the bunch. It has decent head and leg room, especially in the second row, and it has ample storage space. Con, it doesn't have adaptive cruise control. I know it's kind of a luxury, but if you're paying over 2 million for an SUV, you kind of expect that.
How about you, Joy?
Pros, of course, you're gonna have to mention the Ralliart body kit. I mean, not everyone's going to be a fan of the popping red accents, but you can't deny that it does help the vehicle stand out from the crowd, right? Other pros, this is the only one among these three midsize SUVs that comes with a 360-degree camera, which is frankly a very big deal. And also, unlike the Everest here, this gets adaptive cruise control.
As for the MU-X, okay, so pros, well, it was the most efficient, it was the most powerful, it was the fastest. But for a couple of cons, I have to say, I don't like the fact that the second row is fixed. And another thing is, well, it's just not that comfortable compared to these two. And it genuinely surprised me that the Montero Sport is still more comfortable than the MU-X, considering the age of the models.
Wait, I forgot to mention the cons. The biggest con is that third row and the opening in the back, because it's really a pain in the ass to deal with. That's really the biggest one. Other than that, I'm good.
Yeah.
If we're gonna base it all on our metrics, okay, we have to say that we all enjoyed the Everest.
Yes.
But out of all the challenges, it won 2, whereas the MU-X won 3. And on that note, that means we have to choose the MU-X again as our winner for this SUV Big Best.
And I think that boils down to the fact that Isuzu is proficient and are the experts in making workhorses. They're reliable. In this case, they're quick, they're fuel efficient, and yeah, you can't deny it, but for me personally, it's a bit biased. I'm standing in front of it, but I would still pick the Everest. It's not as quick, it's slightly less fuel efficient, but it's the comfiest of the bunch. When you're buying a midsize SUV, you want something fit for the whole family. It's going to keep them comfortable over a long road trip.
How about you, Jay?
Okay, so for me, I want to give props to how Mitsubishi continues to make sure that the Montero Sport, despite being 6-7 years old now, continuing to make sure that it stays in the mix with releases like the Rally Sport Edition, and continuing to add features like adaptive cruise control and a 360-degree camera. So definitely thumbs up for that.
Yeah, and on that note, Dre, you did mention that this is an older brother competing against 2 all-new models that, you know, it's older brothers it used to compete against, but there is an all-new Mitsubishi Montero Sport that's coming out hopefully very soon here in the Philippines, and we're very much looking forward to seeing that.
And on that note, we can't wait to pit the Isuzu MU-X again, but this time with the next generation Mitsubishi Montero Sport. And that next gen Mitsubishi Montero Sport has stiff competition too in the form of the Ford Everest. So it's going to be a very exciting next couple of years in the midsize SUV market.